0% AI are the lowest difficulty on the F1 game, however today I've decided to give them a chance at winning a race and I'm going to be making a pit stop every lap to try and level the playing field. So for the first lap, I knew that I needed to get to the front of the pack and try and give myself as much of a gap as possible to the AI so that I wouldn't have to get overtaken again. However, as you're about to see, it didn't exactly work out like this. My start to the race was pretty decent and I got past Nico Hülkenberg straight away, but I was more focused on making loads of overtakes up the inside into turn 1. I knew I'd brake later than the 0% AI and that's exactly what I did. I made up 12 places into turn 1 and then honestly I just bashed Pierre Gasly out the way, which moved me up to 6th place, and this was 14 places worth of progress in just one corner. Next up was George Russell and I made a very simple overtake by out-dragging him along Radion, and now it was just behind Lando Norris. I tried to go around the outside of Lando through a Rouge, but it didn't quite work out. However, we had managed to catch up to the leading 3 cars and Charles Leclerc could not have moved out of the way at a better time and I got past him pretty easily. I didn't quite have the straight line speed to get past Fernando Alonso coming down the Kemmel straight, but into Lecom I got past him and Alex Albon, and in just 7 corners I had taken the lead of the Grand Prix. But now I needed to build a gap to the AI that was big enough to give me a chance of winning the race. So a pit stop around Spa lasts for 23 seconds, so that's the gap I was aiming for. However, I knew that this would definitely not be possible considering I only had 2 seconds to stretch out this gap and then re-overtake all of the AI every single lap. As I come up to the end of the lap for my first pit stop, I had a gap of 11 seconds and it was increasing, so I knew that I would definitely not be coming out in the lead of the race. I almost crashed out into the barrier on the entrance to the pit lane, which wasn't ideal, however I didn't get damaged so it didn't matter. Whilst I've got a minute, I just wanted to say that if you have any other ideas for F1 game challenge videos, please put them in the comments below, and it can be literally anything, just be creative. Anyway, the AI are about to start overtaking me in fast, but I knew with the exit of the pit lane being on the inside line I would at least gain some of this time lost back, so I was hoping that I would come out in the top 5 of the race. Leaving the pit lane I was in 8th position, however with the inside line and probably just way better traction, I managed to start lap 2 in 4th place, which was excellent and was better than what I'd been on the first lap, which I was definitely not expecting. I was straight away onto the back of Charles Leclerc, who was in 3rd position, and I thought I'd try and go around the outside of him at Eau Rouge, however I couldn't quite squeeze through so I backed out. Annoyingly though, the problem with this is that I knew from the previous lap I wouldn't be making any more overtakes down the Kemmel straight. This is because I must have been running higher wings than the AI and I could not keep up with them, which meant that compared to the last lap I was losing ground, which was definitely not ideal. However, coming into Lecom I made an easy overtake up the inside of Charles Leclerc and I also squeezed up the inside of Fernando Alonso, so now I was in 2nd. Straight away after this I tried to go around the outside of Alex Albon, who was somehow leading the race. I've got no idea how this happened, but I eventually got a better exit than him and I was once again in the lead. So that was another lap of overtaking done. However, it was at this point where I started to get a little bit worried as to whether or not this challenge was actually possible. And this was because I realised that with my poor straight line speed I'd be losing more time making pit stops than I first thought, and for the final lap I knew that all the time I was losing now would definitely have an impact on whether or not I could actually win the race. And as we come up to the end of the lap here, you can see that my gap to Alex Albon was 7 seconds, and this is 4 seconds less than lap 1, and at this rate I would not complete the challenge successfully. I knew that over the next couple of laps I need some really good lap times to at least give me half a chance of winning the race. Leaving the pit lane I came out in 6th place, and this was 2 places less than the previous lap, so at this rate for lap 5 I'd come out in 10th. Honestly, this would make the final lap pretty difficult, and at this point I wasn't actually that confident. Anyway, I left the pit lane just behind George Russell, who was in 5th, and for the first time in this race I actually made an overtake through Eau Rouge. This was pretty nice, but I still had to catch up to everyone else and I wasn't going to make any time up coming through the Kemmel straight here. So next up was Lando Norris, and one thing I noticed was that luckily Alex Albon wasn't pulling away from the rest of the pack, unlike what Max Verstappen usually does, and it's definitely not why I picked him. Moving on, I could see Lando Norris 1.5 seconds ahead of me, and coming into Lecom I knew the AI were very weak in this section, so I was desperate to make some progress. I decided to go up the inside of Lando and squeeze past him, which put me into 4th place, and then straight after this I almost crashed with Charles Leclerc. Fortunately for me I swerved out of the way and now I could see Alex Albon not too far up ahead. However, the next driver I had to focus on was Fernando Alonso, and after that Alex Albon was a second further up the road, but realistically that was nothing. Coming up to No Name Corner here I just got a much better exit than Fernando and now I was up to 2nd place. Next up was the leader Alex Albon, and coming into Poon here I knew that I had to get past him, and that's exactly what I did. I made a very easy overtake, however this was once again later in the lap, so I knew that I was losing crucial time. We'll skip through the rest of this lap now, and as you can see I had managed to keep the gap to Alex Albon to 7 seconds. This is the same as the previous lap and this must just be me getting better at the track, which is useful. However, I stupidly turned in too early changing gears for the pit stop, which cost me a little bit of time, but it is what it is. Leaving the pit lane here for the penultimate time, I momentarily fell to 8th place, however I quickly moved up to 7th, which is only 1 place worse than the previous lap, so it could be worse. Next up was Zhou Guanyu, and I repeated the same move of the previous lap around the outside of Eau Rouge. However, now I had to get through the rest of Sector 1 and then really push on to make overtakes that could determine the outcome of this race. And the first overtake that I would have to make would be on George Russell. Unfortunately, it would definitely not be on this straight here as I have no straight line speed. I mean, I'm literally dumping my ERS button and I'm still losing time to the 0% AI. Unsurprisingly, after this I gained loads of time on him in the braking zone and edge passing, which put me into the top 5. Next up was Lando Norris, and I wanted to overtake him quickly so I didn't get held up. Coming through this downhill section here, I decided to go up the inside of Lando and squeeze past him, so now I was up into 4th. Luckily for me, the front 5 cars were all very close to each other, so I knew I could get these overtakes done quickly. I smashed right into the back of Charles Leclerc through no name, and if I didn't run reduced damage, I'd definitely have no front wing by now. Moving on, Alonso and Albon were a second within each other, and I wanted to make sure both these overtakes were done through Prawn, and that's exactly what I did. I went around the outside of Fernando, which was an easy overtake, and then just after Prawn, Alex broke very early, so I was able to fly past him. Once again, I had lost a little bit of time, and as we go through the rest of this lap, I couldn't get the gap to the 0% AI above 5 seconds. So on this final lap, I'd have to gain 18 seconds to successfully complete the challenge, which definitely won't be easy. So now we're about to find out where I'm going to be starting the final lap, and honestly, I was just hoping to come out in the top 10, and that's exactly what I did. As you can see here, I cut off Lewis Hamilton and took a warning as I knew that I had no time to waste because Alex Albon was already at the top of Eau Rouge. The first driver I had to overtake was Yuki Tsunoda. I considered going around the outside of him at Eau Rouge, but I was too far back. However, this did give me a pretty good slingshot to get past him, but I did have to run off track. This is because there was no way I was going to redo this entire challenge again, and luckily for me, I didn't get another warning. Now for the rest of this first sector, I didn't make another overtake, which was pretty worrying, and I was a mile off Alex Albon. However, next up was Pierre Gasly, and I was desperate to make overtakes very fast. I went around the outside and then up the inside of Gasly and then tried to go around the outside of Zhou. This was unsuccessful, however I got a better exit, and coming into this very long braking zone I was basically cut off by him, but in the end I did make my way past and was up into 6th place. I did get a warning after that, but I wasn't going to wait around, and next up was George Russell. This was my best sector of the track and it definitely showed. At this point I was about 1.5 corners behind Alex Albon, and this is where I started to believe that the challenge was actually possible. I made a pretty simple overtake on George, and now I had 4 to go in just under 2 sectors. First up was Lando Norris, and coming through Prawn here I had a very nice run. I managed to switch back him, so now I was up into 4th place. Now I was focused on Charles Leclerc, and leaving Prawn here I decided to go for a move up his inside, and I just about avoided crashing into him again. Next up was Fernando Alonso, and I knew that in these slower corners I had to close up to him because I could find so much time. As we finished up the second sector here I was right on the back of him, and for a moment I almost spun out, but I managed to hold it together, and now I had 1 sector to make 2 overtakes. At this point Alex Albon was only a second up the road, but first I had to focus on getting past Fernando Alonso. The overtake on Fernando would be pretty simple, and I just had a better exit than him. Now I had just a few corners to get past Alex Albon, and I was going to completely dump my battery to get up to him. I was gaining all the way up to Blanchimont, and I knew that I'd have to overtake him before or into the final corner. Coming through Blanchimont I gained a load of time on Alex, and now I just had to get around him. I pulled alongside him and did just that, however we did make contact for a second, but luckily for me I didn't get damaged. Through the bus stop chicane I was pretty cautious, and leaving it I decided to do some donuts. I had successfully completed the challenge, and thank you all for watching. I hope you had a good Christmas, and sorry this Saturday late, I definitely wasn't busy eating.